This video is sponsored by Squarespace. Hey guys, Jay here. Welcome to Models Memories Weekly, episode 196. Models Memories is a show about nothing and is filmed in front of a live studio audience. This is a show where I talk about my painting, modeling, and working experiences from the week. Now you might be thinking to yourself, Jay, you put out 3 videos a week. Ow! Could I possibly have more to say? Well, I do, and here goes. This week, no couch this week because I needed a little bit of room to spread out because the show used to be called Models and Memories because I would used to go over like an object that had significant memories to me, but I ran into those pretty quick. But today, I've got a new one, and it is my Dark Eldar army that I've been working on all year. Oh, I have fallen in love with the Dark Eldar. And I feel like the Dark Eldar would not have needed to hide away in the webway in the city of Camorra if they had access to some of the amazing features from today's sponsor, Squarespace. Squarespace allows anyone to design the website of their dreams with the most powerful and easiest design tools in the industry, like Design Intelligence. Using AI technology empowers anyone to build a more personalized website tailored to their needs, crafting a bespoke digital identity. Choose from a professionally curated selection of styling options to build a unique online presence from the ground up. Squarespace makes sure it's easy to launch your website and get discovered faster with integrated optimized SEO tools, so you show up more often to more people and grow the way you want. With Squarespace, it's never been easier to set up a unique online storefront. Whether your services are physical, digital, or service-based, selling your wares has never been easier. Squarespace offers unmatched ability to showcase your unique wares with images, video reviews, and add-ons all capped off with their seamless checkout tools, letting your customers use whatever system they prefer, whether Klarna, ACH Direct Deposit, Apple Pay, Afterpay, or ClearPay. Squarespace offers a free trial for you to dip your feet into and test the waters, and ready to dive in headfirst, you can go to squarespace.com/EonsOfBattle or follow the link in the description below to get 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. In January, I came into a unpainted, partially built Dark Eldar army, and so I called up my buddy Scott the Miniature Maniac because I knew that he also had a mostly unbuilt and unpainted Dark Eldar army, and we devised a bit of a little challenge to both get our armies built 2,000 points by the end of this year. And it's the first time I've really been on a time crunch, especially with a full 2,000 point 40k army. I had just gotten back into 10th edition 40k. I kind of skipped 9th edition. I played a lot of 6th edition, a little bit of 7th edition, kind of a little bit of 8th edition, skipped 9th edition, but I've come back strong in 10th edition, and so I want a lot of 40k armies because I get bored really easily, and so it's more fun for me when I have a bunch of different armies to start playing when I start to get a little bit bored of my Space Marines. Not that I would ever get bored of my Space Marines, but after losing a guard for like 30 games in a row, I needed something else. And Dark Eldar is neat. I have never experienced any real Eldar stuff. I actually did paint an Eldar army for my cousin way back in the day on commission, but I haven't. I would love to see that army again. It's been years and years. I think there might be some photos, but that whole time was a blur. Now I have a new elven army, the Dark Eldar, and it has been a challenge. I feel like I get through my 40k armies at a pretty good clip, but that's not actually true. I actually just do paint a lot of Space Marines and a lot of Death Guard, and those units are expensive. For like every 5 Space Marines I complete, I've painted at least 120 points. Every time I paint something for the Dark Eldar, it's like 65 points, maybe scratching 100 points, but the units are so cheap. By the midpoint of the year, I was barely halfway through because I had painted some Cavalite Warriors, some Raiders, but overall, it was a slog. It was a big old challenge, but I'm so glad I did it because this year, technically, I've been working on my Black Templar and I've probably gotten 2,000 points more of Black Templar painted, but in theory, I've been working on my Death Guard and I have maybe 200 or 300 points more Death Guards than I started the year with. I've been working on, what are my other armies? Orcs. I painted some orcs this year. I would say I painted maybe 200 points. I painted Gazi. So I painted, was that this year? I think it was this year. I painted Gazgul, Thraka, and some other things. So probably around 300 points of orcs. Is that it for my 40k? That might be it for my 40k. I painted a lot of random stuff here and there. But yeah, mostly Black Templar. But I've been throwing myself into Drukhari because I have to get it done. there's no options for failure. Because if Scott had an army by the end of the year and I didn't, that would have been bad. And do I have an army now? I do, and I have played with this army only in TTS, Tabletop Simulator on the computer, so that's cheating because I just download all of the models and then they're there for me, as opposed to having to build and paint every single one. But I a little bit failed. This is the first time I've seen the entire force laid out in front of me, and it is glorious, but it is not quite 2,000 points. And I'm gonna say that there's a good reason for that, because a few months back, Scott the Miniature Maniac called me up, and so we've decided to push the end date until March, Adepticon of this year, when we'll meet up and showcase our armies to one another and play a game of 40K where I will absolutely annihilate Scott, because I've played like 60 games of Warhammer 40K, and I think Scott has only played one singular game of 40K and it was against me. So technically, I did not need to get this force done right now in December, but for me, the challenge was still that December date, and I came so close. In front of me, I have 1,665 points of Dark Eldar completed, based, painted, with all of the accoutrement that I want on my guys. And I'm 335 points off of that 2,000 point goal. But I actually feel like that's a really good spot to be in, because in my TTS games, the original list that I wrote for myself in January, before Dark Eldar even had a second detachment to play from, I had 3 Ravagers in my army. Now I'm kind of feeling like 3 Ravagers might not be the move. I think I want some other stuff. And so in terms of like playing 40K, you do want some wiggle room in your list so that you're not just stuck. And so I think 300 points is a good amount of points to play with. Maybe one of the Dark Eldar Flyers. Maybe I just go hard into Rax and the Homunculus Coven, because I really, really like those miniatures. I have 5 Rax, 3 Grotesques. My Archon actually wears flayed human skin as a cape, which kind of ties him in nicely with the Homunculus Coven style of miniatures. And I have got the "You are not a Talos, you are a Kronos." No, wait, other way around. "You are not a Kronos, you are a Talos." And I actually used the Skaven Warp Fiends. I used the Skaven Warp Fiend bottom for the bottom of these guys. And I'm really hoping that next year, Games Workshop does something with the Dark Eldar. Games Workshop, if you want to make me really, really happy, make a new kit for the Talos and the Kronos and make them be different units, because right now, they're very different units on the tabletop, but they're built out of the same box and basically look completely identical to one another, but they don't even share war gear, they just share every single other thing about them. So Games Workshop, please make a new kit for Talos and Kronos so that they're different, and then that way all of my Talos, because I want a lot of Talos in my army, they can all be a little bit unique and special compared to the Kronoses. But I really, really like the Homunculus Coven, and just broke. But it doesn't matter, it wasn't glued, it's not broken. But I really am excited for some new detachments, because Dark Eldar is actually kind of one of those armies where you can go down a bunch of different rabbit holes. Kind of like Orcs, where you can do like regular Orcs, or you can do Beast Snagas. You can do Dark Eldar, but you can follow the Homunculus Coven, or the Witch Cult, or the regular Dark Eldar. I guess it would be the Archon Cabal. And so it would be really fun to build into those other different aspects of the Dark Eldar army. But this year I've experienced a little smattering of all of it, and it's been really, really fun. I'm so close, and it's 300 points by March. Easy. I'll just paint a Void Raven Bomber, which I think is like 210 or 220 points. So that covers most of it. And Void Raven Bomber, flyers aren't really good in 40K, but for Dark Eldar, flyers are actually pretty darn good, because Dark Eldar are the squishiest little things. If anything fights them, they die so hard. And so the Razorwing Jetfighter, like the flyers, are actually really good because they're a little bit harder to kill, but they can also get into the enemy backline and take out some of the things that would cause me trouble. Because, most armies in 40K, if they get into your opponent's backline and they run into like a squad of Infiltrator Space Marines, that's no big deal. A squad of Infiltrator Space Marines will wipe some Dark Eldar units, even some good Dark Eldar units, if I end up in a bad matchup. So being able to take out those key units is really, really nice for the Dark Eldar because they are a hit and run army of glass cannons that aren't even that cannony. You spend your command points and you spend your pain tokens to make your guys even better. Oh, one unit that has made me absolutely fall in love with this army is Court of the Archon. I have played with this in a bunch of games. It's so much fun. It's these 4 losers up here in front. They're great. They're not good on paper. You read their data sheets and you're like, why would I bring 4 random dudes with my Archon that all have like 1 unique weapon each and 1 unique pistol each that doesn't even have a good stat? But then you add in all your pain tokens and you do your shenanigans, and all of a sudden they deal the most damage in my entire army. In 1 turn, they finished off Angron. Sean charged Angron into my lines, and Court of the Archon defeated Angron. Oh, it was absolutely glorious. The Dark Eldar are really, really different. I played a lot of Space Marines, tiny little bit of Necrons. Did I play anything? I played Death Guard. And those armies are fun, but they kind of feel very similar. You kind of have access to the same types of units. You kind of have access to the same types of stratagems. The Dark Eldar are so different and unique and so much fun to play with on the tabletop. I need to really get moving on that last 300 points because I think the GT circuit is starting up again at my local shop. And I kind of want to play with the Dark Eldar. I took my Space Marines this year. I played, I think, in 2 RTs. And I just got absolutely annihilated, but I want to try again. I want to try again with the Black Templar, with the Dark Eldar, which are technically called the Drukhari. But that name will never, ever in the history of the world stick in my head properly. They are the Dark Eldar. That's what they used to say on the box, and that's what I am going with. Another big challenge with painting up a Dark Eldar army is every time I finish a squad of guys, I gotta build a boat. And the boats aren't the easiest things. Look at this Raider. This is kind of a big old ship for essentially just being a rhino. A lot of stuff to paint, a lot of kit bashing and converting. If you notice, all of my guys are on bases, which is one really fun thing I wanted to try out with this army. What was I think I was working on some mini Wargaming Ravaged Star minis. But those guys essentially are on base toppers where there's like a sculpted base that goes right to the ground. And I kind of dig the look of no base rim. It's kind of a thing with miniatures that your miniature has a base to kind of keep them protected from the ground, or I guess your table or the terrain. It probably mattered a little bit more when everyone was playing on sand glued to plywood. But now that we have these lovely neoprene gaming mats as kind of the standard, it's not that big a deal that your model is touching something. And so I just omitted the base rim and I cast it up. I custom sculpted and cast all of these bases in all of the different sizes, which ended up being a big problem. But all of my guys are on custom sculpted bases by me, and I absolutely love it. It probably doubled the amount of time that it took to make this army, but it was absolutely worth it. I cast it up like 8 28.5s because technically the Drukhari stand on 25mm bases, but that can't be true. We haven't gotten a Dark Eldar unit in so many years. Like probably the last Dark Eldar unit to come out, I think was technically Archon, who might stand on a 28.5mm base. But all of these units came out before that base size was even invented. So I assume that all Dark Eldar will eventually stand on 28.5s. And so that's what I have my army standing on. And I assume that Games Workshop will prove me correct the next time that they decide to really update the Dark Eldar. Also, hilariously, for Dark Eldar, Games Workshop came out with some pivoting rules for vehicles, which makes vehicles make a little bit more sense in the game. But when they first came out with those rules, even though those rules were essentially written for the Dark Eldar vehicles because they're so obnoxious, they did not satisfy the rules of the unit because they had bases. And so the thing about Dark Eldar units, is this guy not glued down? I feel like he's wiggling. The thing about something's wiggling. He is. He broke off the base, or I just never glued him. Both of those things sound like they could totally be true. But so look at this unit. If you hold it sideways and then you pivot it, it just got like 4 free inches of movement. And so that shouldn't be allowed for the game to function. And raiders already have excellent movement characteristics. I think it's either 14 or 16 inches of movement. And so, 14 or 16 inches of movement plus 4 is unfair. But for a little length of time, Dark Eldar got to do it. And it was really, really fun. Now, the rules do include units like the raiders and the ravagers. So it's now fair. But for a little bit of time, we did get to break the rules. And it was really, really fun. I was never an Eldar fan in Warhammer 40,000, but it has been really, really fun to experience a whole different side of Warhammer 40k, because Space Marines, kind of the bog standard thing, but Eldar, we interact with the rules a little bit differently. We have very different toughness characteristics. Like, I've never experienced having essentially no saves across my entire army. Everyone essentially has a 6-up feel no pain, or a 6-up invulnerable save, which is kind of hilarious because every time I take damage, it just becomes the slot machine. Let's see how many 6s I roll, and it's kind of fun. But hopefully I don't let anything in my army actually get shot at. That is the main goal. But when I do get shot at, I get to roll some 6s and I get to see what happens. Vehicles with incredible movement speeds. Venoms moving at 16 inches, or they might move 14, because the Reaver jet bikes have a shockingly fast movement characteristic. I never painted the little skulls on these guys. I keep telling myself that every time I paint these guys, because I've been on such a time crunch, there's a couple of little things here and there where I'm like, I'll come back to it. I'll touch that up, I'll spice that up a little bit, and I have to add that to the list, as I never painted the little skulls on this guy's Reaver jet bike spike blade thingies. Man, you definitely don't want to accidentally fall off your bike if you fly a Reaver jet bike, because you just got these horrifying giant sickle blades right behind your head. Some other little touches I would like to do to this army is on one of the last units, actually not quite the last unit I painted up, but close to it, on these scourges. I would really like to either, probably not freehand, I would love to make some sort of a stencil, but I don't know how to make a stencil. I would love to stencil some Dark Eldar symbols on these dark, dark wings of theirs. And all of my vehicles, I kind of have 2 different eras of vehicles, really 3. But my first era of vehicle is hot pink and like cotton candy. It's hot pink and electric blue. And my first tries at this, I'm decently happy with, but my second, third, and fourth tries of this, I am really happy with. With my Venoms, I used liquid mask to get this kind of chipping effect, and I really, really like it. I don't think I would go back and fix these guys up, but I do have some more Dark Eldar vehicle units that I would like to try that effect on. And my Kabalite Warriors, I got super, super lucky with, because I built one of every single special weapon, and it turns out you absolutely have to do that because 10th edition free war gear. The trick that you do with your Kabalites is every time you'd include a squad of Kabalite Warriors in your army, you take a Venom, because the Venom allows you to split a 10-man brick into 2 5-man bricks. You put all of the guns in one squad, and then you put all the regular guys in another squad. The regular guys, just sticky objectives, they're still great, but you take all of those special weapons, and then you attach them to a squad of Court of the Archon, and then you attach an Archon to that squad, and so now you've stitched together, which is perfect for Dark Eldar, you've stitched together this weird unit that has a bunch of different profiles, and it takes such a long time to do, but it's so awesome. There is a stratagem that lets regular Kabalite Warrior weapons have sustained hits too. So when you're shooting your Dark Lance, if it rolls a 6 to hit, which you can easily get rerolls, so what is that? It's a 1 in 6 chance, but if you have a 1 in 6 chance with a reroll, does that even make it better? It obviously does, but if you get a 6, all of a sudden your Dark Lance shot 3 times. It's glorious. It didn't happen in my game, but one day it will happen. And then you've got your Archon, who's also an absolute slot machine. He has a 2-up invulnerable save, which is absolutely cheating. But if he ever rolls a 1 ever for a saving throw, he loses the 4-up invul. It's just gone. And then he's back to his normal saving throws. That's really, really fun. He might just absolutely tank the entire game. Or you'll do what happened to me, which is roll a 1 immediately right off the jump and immediately lose your 2-up invulnerable save. But stuff like that is what makes the Dark Eldar so much fun to play with. One thing that I absolutely need to do as soon as possible is I need to put together a squad of witches. but I've kind of been waiting because I really don't like the witches available from Games Workshop. In my opinion, they look just a little bit too much like normal Kabalite warriors, and they're just not fun to me. They don't satisfy like what the witches are, which is gladiator warriors. They kind of just look like Kabalites who forgot to put on a couple pieces of their armor. And so I actually bought a squad of Daughters of Cain Stabby Ladies. I think it might just be called witches too, but I bought a squad of Daughters of Cain Stabby Ladies. I'm pretty sure that's the right name. And so I'm going to kit bash those guys to be the witches who are going to ride along with Lilith Hesperex. A squad of witches led by Lilith hits so incredibly hard and has absolutely nothing in the way of survivability. I charged them into a squad of Chaos 8-bound, and I killed like 4 of them. Beautiful, amazing charge on the swing back. I think he wiped the squad. There's nothing to them. I think they're toughness 2 or toughness 3 or strength 2. Yeah, toughness 2, toughness 3. There's absolutely nothing to them, but it's really fun. It's really fun to jump them out of a transport, spend a CP so that they can fight. If they somehow amazingly manage to actually kill something, then they could hop right back into their Venom transports with the Venom special ability. It's really, really fun. If you had told me last year that I would be collecting Dark Eldar, I might have believed you, because this whole army and this whole challenge is kind of just for one singular purpose. Number one is to beat Scott the Miniature Maniac. And am I gonna win? I mean, we'll see what happens, but I think I'm looking pretty good. But the second reason to collect this army is because one of my favorite models in all of Warhammer 40,000 is the Tantalus. The Tantalus is essentially, something fell off. The Tantalus is essentially 2 raiders taped together. I guess it's almost like 4 raiders taped together. It's glorious. It's a gigantic, punky clipper ship, and it is beautiful. And I have 2 of them. One of them is secondhand. I mean, they're both secondhand, but one of them is new in bag from Forge World, and one of them is put together, and I'm gonna build them. I'm gonna build the Tantalus. And this is why Dark Eldar are so silly. One of the beautiful, amazing flagship Forge World miniature for this army in-game is like 220 points. It is cheaper than a Land Raider for the Space Marines, and is way cheaper than a Rogel Dorn battle tank for the Imperial Guard. Maybe not after the points changes, but the gigantic unit that is so big you'll have trouble getting it into your deployment zone. It's just it's some points. It's kind of cheap actually. But yeah, I really, really want to put those together and paint them up. And they need the backdrop though of a fully painted Dark Eldar army in pink. I picked pink on a whim. None of my armies are pink, if you can believe it. And I just thought it would be a fun color to experiment with. And it has been really fun to experiment with. I paint everything black or gray or greenish gray or rusty gray. Pink has been such a weird, wacky color to work with. And I do have lore reasons why they're pink, because all Eldar souls are destined to go to Slaanesh. But Dark Eldar, the way that they don't let that happen is they never die. Even if Dark Eldar get absolutely mushed and turned into a puddle of blood, you just scoop up that blood and you pour it into like a cauldron of boiling babies, and then he steps right back out perfectly fine. Dark Eldar never die. And since they never die, they wear pink, and sometimes blue. They wear pink to just stick it in the face of Slaanesh. The Prince of Pleasure will never get anybody from my Dark Eldar collection. And to tease the Laughing God, or I guess the Laughing God is a different god, to tease Slaanesh, they wear pink. Oh, but speaking of the ones who don't wear pink, I have some guys who wear teal, and there's 2 colors on my desk right now. I think they're Army Painter War Color, Army Painter Fanatic, Hydra Turquoise, and I think Phantasm Bolt. I can't tell these colors. I can tell the colors apart when they're sitting on my desk, but I can't for the life of me remember which one I actually used in my army. So I think every single time I painted a different Dark Eldar unit, I painted them with a different color of tealy blue. And I kind of feel like it works, and I wrote it down, but I don't believe myself when I wrote it down, because I'm pretty sure I picked up the wrong bottle that I didn't paint my guys with, and I wrote that into the color scheme. So I don't trust myself, and I don't trust what color I actually used to paint these guys. And so each one is a little bit different, but then I I did other things to them, like I changed the hue and saturation with some glazings of inks and contrast paints, so it is kind of a mess, but that's perfect. It's the Dark Eldar, the Drukhari. I am perfectly fine with everything being a bit of a mess. But you know what is not messy? That's right, EonsOfBattle.com. EonsOfBattle.com is the place to find our merch, like the new Nick and Jay dice, and it is also the place where you can find the terrain scattered about this army, because also this year I helped to invent some Dark Eldar terrain to go along with this army, and I think it looks pretty dapper. On our website, you'll find the best way to support us doing what we do with a membership. Each month, members get 1 credit that they can spend on our new monthly terrain pack or any previous pack we have ever made, like the Dark Elf encampment that you see scattered about my Drukhari army. I'm actually really excited to work on some of the bigger things that stand on 120mm bases because I want to sprinkle in some of this Dark Eldar terrain. But speaking of terrain, our new terrain pack is pretty sick. For the month of December, we have made the Fall Buildings Part 1, the easiest way to get a ton of terrain really fast. This set focuses on printable decorations for cardboard, foam core, and Pringles cans buildings. Build out a grimdark militarized fort dripping with details, the selection of sandbag-laden battlements, barbed wire defenses, armored wall decorations, and noble eagle lookout posts. This set allows for large terrain to be built in record time, and it has printable textures to add detail and decorations to take this terrain to the next level. This is the first of 3 releases that focus on getting a proper 40k board up and running and as easily as possible. Even if I might not nail my goal of a full 2,000 points this December, I'm still very, very pleased with myself. I came so close and I painted so many models, and I painted them exactly how I wanted to paint them. I put all of the little bayonets on all my Cabalite warriors. I painted up one of Scott's Cabalites and I put it dead on Lilith Hexbrex's base. I did the chipping medium. I tried all sorts of different paints and then quickly forgot the recipe that I used to paint with. I had so much fun painting this army, and I'm excited because this army is almost done. I'll probably get it done early next year. Maybe that means I get to move on to some other things because I have a lot of 40k armies and I might own even more. And so, if I wasn't spending a gigantic portion of this year painting, if I'm not gonna spend a gigantic portion of next year painting Dark Eldar, I get to decide what that project is gonna be. Right now, I am this close to having a finished Dark Eldar army, and I'm pretty jazzed about it. And so I have a favor to ask all of you guys. If you guys could go to Scott the Miniature Maniac's newest video, hop into the comments and ask him how he's doing on his Dark Eldar army. I would really appreciate it. Thanks for watching.